Dividing line. There you go. Greetings and welcome to the dividing line. I want to make sure that those levels are not too high. They look like they're about right. Okay. Welcome to the program this evening. Two big issues right off the top. Bryson DeChambeau, the golfer guy, he made his hole-in-one over his mansion. If you don't know about it, don't worry about it. I have a friend who's a golf fanatic, and so I see golf stuff on my feed, and he's been trying to make a hole-in-one into his backyard from his front yard over his house for, I think, 2 weeks. And he finally did it. And if I was doing that, there would not be a window left. He never hit a window. He did a good job. So that happened. And then the other thing, 2 days ago, at age 95, I was just informed by a friend of mine, at age 95, Hal Lindsey passed on into glory at age 95, 2 days ago. And I'll just say what I've said many times before. You used to have to take something called the California Achievement Tests in high school. And I always found them rather boring and simplistic. And so I had lots of time to sit around after finishing sections. And I just remember so clearly. I remember what the room looked like. It was the amphitheater we had at Independence High School. And this would have been late 80 or early, I think it was early 81, because I graduated in 81. Sitting there on the front row in those theater style seats. And when I get done with the test, I got out Late Great Planet Earth and the red one, the red paperback. And I remember it very, very, very clearly and very well. So Hal Lindsey, dead at 95. So, all right. I wanted to do some other stuff. I wanted to talk a little bit about, Thanksgiving tomorrow. I did stuff on Thanksgiving last week. This is the first day that I've had the opportunity to set up the entirety. We actually, believe it or not, we have 2 cameras now. The problem is I can't see myself. So we have 2 cameras, and you look at the, I'm looking at the image here, and that worked out really well. You got to understand, Rich put a lot of work into that to get that background because there's an RV window back there, and it just didn't look right to not have it covered with the same, stuff. Those are big, heavy rocks. I mean, our gas mileage stinks now because of how heavy those rocks are. If I blew at it, they'd... Anyway, I've got a thing. It's somebody else's message. Okay. So we have 2 cameras now, and this is the camera I will use for personal, more intimate statements. Yeah. Anyway, so I am in Pryor, Oklahoma, where I'll be speaking this weekend. I'll be spending Thanksgiving tomorrow and Friday. I get 2 Thanksgiving. At least I'm making up for having lost my family Thanksgiving dinner, which I really missed having. But I will get to have 2 Thanksgiving dinners over the next 2 days. And then I'll be speaking over the weekend at Grace Life Church in Pryor. And I want to thank Dr. Friss for adjusting me a couple hours ago. I don't know what I've done to it, but I've so far avoided taking any pain meds. I hate taking Advil. Tylenol does nothing for me. Advil is really bad for your liver and stuff like that, and so I've avoided it. But it's not fun right now, and so hopefully the good doctor will help me with that. But I really am thankful for folks. I mean, because he came in the day before Thanksgiving into opened his office up just simply to see me, and so I'm very, very thankful for people like that who help to make my life a little bit easier as I'm out here traveling around. And it's going to be pretty nippy here. It's going to be getting below freezing the next couple nights, and I'm sort of looking forward to that. I enjoy, I'm wearing one of my nice tundra sweaters right now. I enjoy all that. And I'm going to be able to enjoy all of it so much more after this program. So it's been about a month now since Tobias Riemenschneider. It's not difficult to say, by the way. You don't have to say Riemenschneider. I mean, that's a nice German way of saying it. Get lots of spit going all over your computer and stuff like that. But you can just say Riemenschneider. That's okay. It's not quite German, but it's all right. It was about a month ago when Tobias sent me I don't remember if it was just the audio or if I stripped the audio out so I could listen while driving. I was on the road. Of his response to Joel Webben. So it's been about that amount of time. And when he released that, everything that has happened since then has certainly been enlightening as to the nature of online interaction amongst ostensibly reformed people. And I say ostensibly reformed because I think a lot of the people that have been the worst examples of slander and just every kind of childish behavior on the planet, a lot of them I don't think are in churches, or they're only marginally involved. The ones that are in churches are the ones I'm most concerned about, to be perfectly honest with you. And at some point early on, I think after Eschatology Matters pulled his webcast, I said something about going on the dividing line, and Tobias specifically asked me not to until he had an opportunity to respond personally. And I need to honor that request because this is about him. And so I said, fine. And at that time, he was traveling in the UK, flew home, had a big conference that my fellow pastors, Jeff Durbin and Luke Pearson, were attending and speaking at. I did a little 20-minute thing via Zoom. And so that was the next weekend. And so then a whole nother week passed until the recording was done this past Saturday. And now my understanding is that has now been posted and is available for people to listen to, which means those of us who were under a gag order, an appropriate one, can now speak. Now, the problem is that the dead air should not, amongst mature people, have been an issue. Amongst mature Christians, it should have been, well, we need to hear both sides. And so we will wait to hear that other side, as long as it's not, 3 months down the road or something. We will wait and make our judgments based upon what is then provided. But that's amongst mature Christians, and there aren't many of them in Twitter these days, sadly. Or at least that are, let's put it this way, the mature Christians aren't living there and posting memes and doing all sorts of other insane stuff like that. And so this is my first opportunity to finally respond to things. Now, what's fascinating and sad is that I've already had numerous conversations over the past couple of weeks with people. And it was in the context of saying, well, this is why you're not getting an immediate response. There is a logical, rational, adult reason for this. And I can't tell you how many times I had people say, I don't care what Tobias has to say. He slandered Joel Webben, and so have you, and you all need to be canceled, and you need to leave the ministry. I had a bunch of people say, you're disqualified, liar, leave the ministry. And I'm like, how can you come to that conclusion before you hear both sides? I don't need to hear both sides. What I've heard's enough. Okay. All right. Well, so that's where we are. And the more I've thought about it, the more I've realized what this past month has shown is whatever ideas anybody has about what quote unquote Christian nationalism is, you have to have mature Christians to give guidance to a society. And man, we ain't ready for prime time. And of course, I've always said the only way that anything like that can ever happen is after the Puritan hope, the major conversion of the nations to true disciples of Jesus Christ. And the idea of doing it as a minority, Christian princes, all the rest of this kind of sacralist stuff is foolishness and will implode so fast it's not even funny. And that's what we've seen over the past 4 weeks. I have a list, and I will pull it up. I'm not sure where I exactly put it, but I will pull it up. That Pastor Peter Schilt put together. Excellent list of all the stuff. My goodness, I've gotten so many emails since I last, since this morning. It's not even funny. There it is. He has put together a tremendous list of the things that he has taken screenshots of and seen going on over the past 4 weeks that I think is extremely useful. And it will help me to remember, because I've been driving for hours and hours over the past few days, and I can guarantee you I've said some really cool things, but only my truck heard it. So I'll not remember all those things this evening. But I do want to finally get an opportunity to address this situation. First of all, I've already seen a number of people. Well, I guess it's not first of all, but I've seen a number of people setting up to say, hey, don't let them, that would be myself, Doug Wilson, Joe Boot, etc., Andrew Sandlin, don't let them separate the Antioch Declaration from this situation. So what that tells me is they want to conflate these things. There is a desire to conflate these things so that you don't actually have to deal with the fundamentally obvious assertions that are made in the Antioch Declaration, because that's the issue. The issue that started all this was a pastoral concern on the part of the pastors in Germany, where they know something about Nazism, sort of have some firsthand experience there. They're concerned that these ideas, and that it's not just a swastika or the white boy summer stuff where you had the Nazi imagery all through it, but it is a fundamental white supremacy idea. For the Nazis, it was Aryan supremacy. But people in the United States don't care about that, so more just a a white supremacy idea. So it includes ethnic animus toward everybody else. So if you don't like your Hindu neighbor, if you don't like your Buddhist neighbor, your black neighbor, your Jewish neighbor, your Muslim or Arabic neighbor, this has something, it offers something for everybody. And so the statement, the declaration, is a statement unto itself. It our hope is that there will eventually be proper God-honoring private arbitration. I don't think calling it a church council or court is necessarily the best way, but arbitration by godly Christian men to bring about reconciliation between Tobias and Joel, which it's interesting to note in what Tobias released today. He talks about the fact, and I remember this, during COVID, Tobias had, I was doing church history lessons for the church there in Frankfurt, and he had mentioned to me at one point that he was considering trying to get to the United States, to get out of the lockdowns that were much more strict and scary in Europe and in Germany especially than in most places in the United States. And that he was in contact with Joel Webben and was even talking to him about possibly going to that church and pastoring there. And I sort of thought to myself, not sure how exactly that would fit, but okay, I had done a webcast with Joel. I then spoke at one of the conferences along with Joe Boot. And so I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So there had been a positive relationship there at one point in time. And so what gave rise to the now infamous Zoom call was a sincere concern, pastoral concern, on the part of Tobias Riemenschneider and Peter Schilt concerning a former member of their church and his not a meme, but his communications with not only the pastors but former best friends in regards to being a self-avowed or convinced anti-Semite. How did that happen? What brought that about? What was the nature of that? So that's what that was the issue that unfortunately has been completely eclipsed by a narrative from only one side. That hopefully now, at least for those, again, I realize nothing that I say this evening, nothing that Tobias says in his response is going to mean anything to almost all of the red avatar, blue laser-eyed guys. They don't care. They have a narrative. They're going to live with it. They're going to run with it. And that's all there is to it. I get that. But for the people who really want to understand what has this been about, and when I look at the Antioch Declaration, is this just simply a shot at Joel Webben? No, it's not, and that's absurd. But again, there's a lot of absurd stuff going around in certain groups these days. So going back in time, I sat down. I was going to start trying to put together a timeline. I just couldn't. There's just so much to try to remember and put in some type of order. But at some point earlier in this year, Tobias had expressed to me his concerns about what he was seeing in the American church. And that's when I learned about this individual who had left his church and moved to the United States. I don't know that I've been told about that before. I knew the man. Only, well, I don't remember. I may have met him in Germany. I'm not sure, but I remember in the Zoom calls where I was doing the church history stuff that I remembered his name. And so was not just a complete stranger as far as that's concerned. And at some point, I forget what the date is. I didn't bother to look these things up, but it's all on. Believe me, it's all out on the web. There is a not so anonymous individual who put out a video recently, accusing me of all sorts of lying and things like that, taking clips and then weaving his own narrative in to try to make me look as bad as possible. I know who he is. I've worked with his dad, and so I'm not going to say anything more than that. But it's just a lot of this stuff's out there, just only in a partial format. Anyway, Doug Wilson in Blog and Mablog made reference to a meme that Tobias had told me about and had described to me. I'm not sure if he sent it to me or not. He may have. I don't remember. But it's now the infamous meme where the little girl is asking the mother, what was the Holocaust? And mom says, the Holocaust was when the Jews were forced to do manual labor, and they said it was killing them. Most rational people, when they first hear something like that, are just stunned. They're shocked. But the blue laser-eyed guys are like, you shouldn't be shocked. There's nothing wrong with that. This is just simply a questioning of the post-war consensus. When in reality, the meme, first of all, as Doug had pointed out, contains ethnic animus toward Jews, saying that they won't do manual labor. Anyone who's seen the IDF setting up a defensive position or something knows that Jews do manual labor. So it's a attack upon a whole group of people. And then, of course, it contains an inherent Holocaust denialism because it says they said it was killing them. So Doug mentioned this, and pretty much in passing, it was short. I remember looking right over there. I was sitting right where I'm sitting right now. And I remember commenting and being rather forceful in stating that, from my perspective, anyone who would not repent of this kind of attitude, this kind of animus, this kind of ethnic prejudice, should be put on church discipline. Now, by the way, putting someone under church discipline is not the same thing as excommunicating. Church discipline is meant to actually avoid excommunication because that's the last step after everything else has failed. But should be put under church discipline. If they refuse to repent, then that would be, the final outcome of that. And I said, if elders in a church refuse to act on something like this, or encourage it, or just turn a blind eye, get out of there. Get out of that church. Those people should step down. They shouldn't be shepherding Christ's flock if they allow this kind of cancer in. I was very strong in what I had to say. And I stand by that because this is a cancer, and I had absolutely no idea that day. None of how widespread this was. I've had some people say, well, you were ahead of the curve on that. No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. I was not ahead of the curve. I'm going to move the microphones because I'm facing this direction. It might work better. Anyway, I was not ahead of the curve in any way, shape, or form, because over the next 48 hours after that program, my block list on Twitter exploded. And stunningly to me, I mean, the behavior of the people, the anger, the hatred, I was just taken aback. But the thing that blew me away was at least 50% of the people I was blocking, because you have to go to their, you click on the name on Twitter anyways, you click on the name, their bio comes up and it says follows you, or doesn't say follows you or whatever. And there's a little 3 dots you have to click to choose mute, block, whatever. Half the people in that first 48 hours that I was blocking had 1689 or LBCF in their bio. London Baptist Confession of Faith, 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith. They're fellow Reformed Baptists. I'm still stunned and shocked, even after these months, that was the case. That was the first indication I had of how widespread this cancerous animosity, this mindset that is not based on the grace of Jesus Christ and salvation. It's not based on the view of the body of Christ as men from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. It's Christian theology squished down under the weight of a white supremacist political system. For example, the philia concept from Aristotle that was reposted by people, even though that section was written by a Nazi. Well, he went through a number of stages in his life. 2 of them were a Nazi stage, and there were others. Anyways, that stuff is out there, and I didn't know it. I did not know that it was in Reformed churches. I've seen OPC guys, PCA guys. The Lutherans are doing their own thing with Corey Mahler. It stunned me. And so I think the next week... Now, here's the most important part about that particular program. I didn't name any names. I said, when I was saying you need to get away from these people, I said, and I will name names. I was talking about if I found out about a church that was actively promoting this stuff, that's what I was referring to. But both Joel Webben and Tobias Riemenschneider assumed that because I knew about the meme, that I was calling for Joel Webben to step down. And that actually never crossed my mind. And I'll tell you why. When I decided to make those comments, I almost never type stuff out and I'm just flowing rather freely most of the time on the dividing line. When I decided to make those comments and I started talking about Blog and Mablog, off the top of my head, I remember looking at that chair right there, and the thought was going through my mind, did that guy go to Joel Webben's church? Did he go to Ogden? Did he go someplace else? I had known. I had been told. But as I sat there, I was going, I'm not sure. So I didn't name any names. Because I wasn't, and I wouldn't have, because that's not the time, that's not what I was thinking about. What I was thinking about was making a very strong statement that this kind of ethnic animus is poison wherever it shows up. And we're going to warn anybody about it. But because Joel knew what it was, and Tobias knew what it was, they made that assumption. And that comes up in the Zoom call. And in fact, they're operating. Joel was operating, and Tobias was operating on the assumption that I had called for Joel's resignation, which I had not. So that's on me. except that the only people that would have taken it that way were the people that already knew about the situation, and that was like, what, 2 or 3 people that might be listening? Because this is before the Zoom call. And so the next week, I tried to explain what it was I was talking about. And in fact, I forget when it was, but at some point in that time frame. Oh, that's right. When the Zoom call actually took place, what's really interesting, most people don't know this. Well, most people who've already made up their minds didn't know about almost any of the background at all. When that took place, I think the same day, Tobias texted me, and he said that there had been this conversation on Zoom, and my recollection is he felt positive about it, but the one thing I'm absolutely certain of is that he said to me that I should contact Joel and try to be of encouragement to him. He wanted to see Joel encouraged. And I think what was behind all that was he was still working on the assumption that I had called for him to step down and to leave the ministry and so on and so forth. So at some point, I was driving westward in New Mexico. So it would have been at the end of my last trip, I think. Anyway, I'm starting to try to index things by where was I on I-40 when this happened? I was driving westbound in New Mexico when I got hold of Joel on the phone. It was a brief conversation. He was busy. I was on the road. There was various issues with his cells and stuff like that. And I assured Joel I wasn't calling for your resignation. That was not what I intended. I'm sorry if you took it that way. I guess I could have been clearer. Of course, no one else knew what the background is, so no one else would have come to that assumption. And the people that have come to that assumption since then, it's only because all that information has come out at a later time. And he said, "That's cool. We're good. No problem." And it was fairly brief. And of course, since then, I've also explained to Tobias that was not what I intended to communicate. So, insofar as, if that was functionally relevant and important to the Zoom call and how it went, then I apologize for that misunderstanding. And I wish that had not been a part of the conversation. Because that part of the conversation was where Tobias had sort of turned to Joel and said, "You're changing. You're not saying the same things. You're not focused on the same things that you were previously." And Tobias is right about that. And I've said that to Joel as well. And I think if he would consider it, he would recognize he is changing. And I have the gut feeling that by April, there's going to be a lot more changes in Joel's theology. I think he's going to be moving away from places that he was only last year or the year before. And if those comments from the dividing line were relevant to that part of the Zoom call, then that's on me. And I should have tried to find some way. I should have thought, well, there might be a couple people who will take this wrongly if they have the background information, which nobody else did. And if the Zoom call hadn't happened, all the rest of the stuff that happened, no one ever would have even considered that's what I allegedly was calling for. So anyway, the Zoom call takes place. I have the conversation with Joel. say, hey, I'm not trying to nuke you, or that's not what I was calling for. Okay, we're good, we're fine, and moves on. I don't know how long after that. Couldn't have been that long after that. It couldn't have been that long after that Joel came out with the hour and 45-minute webcast where he says, hey, we're the ones that they were talking about. This is our church. This is our member. I'm going to be defending my member. And that was prompted, in my understanding, by the fact that somewhere in this timeline, Tobias was on Iron Sharpens Iron with Chris Arnzen. And he had talked about his concerns about the rise of Nazism, white supremacy, anti-Jewish hatred, Holocaust denialism, the whole complex of things that are running around together in various forms. And I have not heard that program. But I do know from what Joel has said, what Tobias has said, that when he was talking about that stuff, he did not name names. But then, toward the end of the program, a listener wrote in and said, who's putting up with this stuff? Who's encouraging this stuff? Who's providing a context for this stuff to thrive? And that's when he named Joel and the Ogden folks. I think Andrew Isker. That's when he, quote unquote, named names. And so evidently that was what then prompted, because I was a little surprised by this, but again, I hadn't heard the Iron Sharpens Iron program. That's what then prompted the hour 45-minute, 2-hour webcast from Joel, where he went after Tobias big time. He said he lost his mind. He said he was trying to get, what was the term he used? A dance monkey dance. He talked about boomer brain. He really just, and it's funny, you would think if there was some kind of consistency in what's going on online these days, there would be people who were calling for apologies and stuff for that. But you're not gonna hear that. He really, really went after Tobias. And I listened to it, and it was troubling. And so I responded partially on the dividing line. Just partially. And this is, the reason is very, very clear now. When I did my response, both Tobias and Peter, well, especially Tobias, were really disappointed in my response. Tobias had wanted me to defend him. And I explained to Tobias, I said, I can't because I wasn't part of the Zoom call. I didn't hear what was said. I can't comment on stuff like that, not meaningfully. And so eventually I think Tobias understood, well, yeah, I guess that's correct. But that may have also been part of what convinced Tobias to do his response as well. He said a number of people encouraged him to do it. He had been attacked. Lots of stuff had been said that just simply wasn't true about him. And so he recorded that. And like I said, at some point in time, he said, okay, I have recorded it. And I'm not sure why my iPhone is thinking that I'm trying to... Anyway, it happens. I've recorded it, but I want you to listen to it. And I want you to give me your honest opinion. So, okay, I'm driving tomorrow. I'll give it a listen. So I did. And I called him up on Signal. I said, well, that's an atomic bomb. it's gonna get things going, which certainly did, not in ways that we really imagined. I said, there's going to be a lot of pushback. You need to be prepared for it. But if that's what was going on, then you need to say what was going on. So let me, at this point, I think it's very important. Already a number of other people, yesterday on Chris Arnzen's program, there were those who know Peter and Tobias, who gave personal testimony of their character, and of their pastoral concern. The things that I've seen over the past month, the memes, the mockery, the just vile behavior of ignorant people who have no idea what the actual background is, astonishing to me. Absolutely astonishing to me. I met Peter at the Frankfurt airport because I tweeted that I was stranded in Frankfurt between flights. And he said, "Hey, I live real close to the airport. Would you like to have lunch?" And Peter comes over and we have a grand conversation. He says, "Hey, if you ever fly through here again, try to spend some time. We'd love to have you speak at the church." So I don't think it was even a year after that until we arranged that. And so for a number of years there, not a big number of years, but for a number of years in the late teens, I visited Frankfurt. I spent time with Tobias and Peter and the folks there at the church, and gave seminars, and Tobias would translate for me, and we just have a grand time while I was there. The things that have been said about Tobias, I saw someone literally said, none of you had ever heard about Tobias Riemenschneider before, but now you have. And that's why this was all done. This is all brand building. This is all getting a platform in America, and all the rest of this kind of stuff. It's just, could not be farther from the truth. There were a number of times when Tobias has said, "Well, do you think, I've been invited to go do this, but I just don't know." When Tobias preached at Apologia this past summer, that was sort of late spring, I guess, I think about it. When he preached at Apologia, that was the first time he had ever preached in English. And I have said this many times before. Tobias speaks better English than almost all of his English-speaking critics, by a long shot. And so I've had to encourage him. I've said, "Tobias, your English is clear. It's great. It's compelling. You've got good things to say. Yeah, if you're given opportunities to do stuff, do it. You've got a unique perspective to bring. Christians who live under the horrific restraints of the secular state of Germany, they can't homeschool their children there. That gives you the ability to speak that a lot of other people don't have. So yeah, I've had to encourage him to do that kind of stuff. All this stuff about him being a slanderer, these guys are just trying to break into the American scene, all this stuff, is completely false. I can tell you without any hesitation that Tobias and Peter are pastors. They bravely stood for Christ's truth in Germany. Their motivations are pure. And all of this stuff, all of these ignorant people who, without any knowledge of their background, hearing anything from what Tobias was going to say, who have slandered him, mocked him, you will answer, because you are completely wrong. You're lying. And you may believe the people who are lying to you. Doesn't matter, you're still lying. These are two genuine men who love Christ, love the church, and are seeking to do the right thing. And that is not questionable. I am not the only one who has said these things. And so let he who is out without sin cast the first stone. There's a lot of people have skeletons in their closets. I don't believe they do. They're the real thing, and I'm proud to call them brothers, proud to call them colleagues, proud to call them friends. So I want to make that very, very clear. That no matter what else is going on, their motivations in this, they may never do anything like this again, and may never try to help the American church again. I don't know. I couldn't blame them if they didn't. But their motivations have been the right motivations from the beginning. Okay, so his response drops, and it's only a few days before his response is pulled by Eschatology Matters. Why? Well, because they're contacted by Joel, and he says, I have a recording of the Zoom call. Now, you need to understand, that's illegal in Germany. And so it never crossed the minds of Tobias and Peter. Or probably, there were two other men on the call. Only one spoke. But there are two other men on the call. I've spoken to one of those other men. Had a good conversation with him. Anyway, then the weird stuff starts. Because if the real issue is, well, Tobias said that we never talked about excommunication, but here's where he talks about excommunication. Then what you do is you provide the call. But here's the problem. This was a pastoral call, and the young man, Benjamin, didn't want it released. Now, from my perspective, if he doesn't want it released, then you don't release it. But at the same time, if you're going to release part of it, like my understanding was there was a 26-second clip that was used. Now, I never did find out whether Eschatology Matters was given the whole call or just that 26-second clip. But it's pulled, and the narrative begins, he lied about everything. The reality is, now that Tobias has responded and he's provided screenshots and clips from the Zoom call and all this stuff, it took some time to do this and to do it well and to do it right. They did talk about excommunication. And when they were asked if Benjamin was in their church, it was said, you would be put under church discipline. But not about the meme. And the whole thing, the whole narrative was, in Joel's webcast, had been, they wanted me to excommunicate this wonderful man and his wife and his kids, and that wasn't even part of it, but his wife and his kids, simply for sharing a meme that questions the post-war consensus. But when you listen to the Zoom call, over and over, at least more than once, it was said strongly, it's not about the meme, it's about the attitude that he continues to have. That's not what it's about. And besides that, not once they say, you need to excommunicate this man. You need to put this man in church discipline. They were not saying that. Their concern was, why isn't there more concern here? What's going on here? This man has radicalized since he left us. Why? What's going on? And so I'm like, well, wait a minute. So 26 seconds has been released, but you're not going to give. So Tobias says, well, can I hear this? Could you give me the call? No. And Joel, even according to Eschatology Matters, forbade them from sharing even that, whatever it was they were given, whether it was just a clip or the whole thing, I don't know. You're not to give any of this to Tobias. And so a couple days, we're all sitting there going, well, wait a minute. All of a sudden, there's this chorus of Anons, primarily. Tobias needs to repent. He's a slanderer. He lied about Joel. And it's like, well, but that means you need to give him the Zoom call. I mean, look, pastorally, you could protect the member of the church by giving the Zoom call only to people who were on the Zoom call. Right? I mean, you know, here, refresh your memory. This is a number of months ago. Here's what the recording is. But they wouldn't do that. And then we start seeing, and this really bothered me, we start seeing this immature back and forth between certain people. Hey, do you think we should release the Zoom call? I don't know. What do you think? This kind of stuff. That's when I start going, okay, something's rotten in Denmark here, or Germany. What is this? And when I saw other people starting to comment about the content of the Zoom call, then I knew it was being passed around. I knew and confirmed that Benjamin did not want it being passed around. So where did it come from? Well, there's only one person in control of it. There's only one side in control of it. And now that it's everywhere and everyone has heard it, there's only one side that allowed that to happen. And that's just a fact. And once I saw that there were these blue laser-eyed guys who had seen this material, I'm like, it's only a matter literally of hours or days until we will have the Zoom call. Because once you start passing that around in the little shady chat rooms and with the blue-eyed laser guys, they're not all that sharp. And they're going to give it to someone who's going to go, I think I'll pass this over here. And that's exactly what happened. It was made available to, I don't know how it came to Tobias, but we ended up with the Zoom call. And so that was just rinky-dink childish. That's not how you do things. It was rinky-dink, childish. If you're going to say, hey, we've got the evidence, then you need to make it available. Because Tobias is like, look, if I misspoke, if I misremembered, give it to me. I'll apologize. No, we won't do it. We'll just let the mobs roll for a while, get them really going, and you know, that'll accomplish what we want to accomplish. It was bad. That's not how any of it should ever have been dealt with. But then once I got a chance to listen to it, it was extremely troubling. The stuff that was being said, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I do not understand how anyone can sit there and listen to someone talking about the Jews as prisoners of war. Prisoners of war. You mean all those Jews that were in the Warsaw Ghetto and then shipped off to Dachau and Auschwitz and Buchenwald and wherever they ended up at? They're prisoners of war? They're non-combatants. Even if you could say, well, there may have been some Jewish guys that would fight with the resistance. Okay. 99% of the Jewish men who died in Auschwitz or Dachau or Buchenwald or wherever Sachsenhausen, were non-combatants. 100% of the women were non-combatants. The babies and children were non-combatants. And so to hear that even being allowed that should immediately be, what are you talking about? That's absurd. That's ridiculous. And I was like, this does not. And then all the way through it, as I was listening to it, something just wasn't jiving. Something just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, okay, the one time that the British fellow piped up, and he was animated. Most Brits aren't quite that animated, but he was quite animated. And when he did speak up, I could sense this frustration, and he's basically saying, Benjamin, this is not what you've been saying to us. You are not coming out honestly and saying what you have said to us. You're parsing things differently. And I got that sense. I really did. I'm going to quit turning to the one side. Go back to the normal stuff here. I just wanted to do that so that Rich could go, man, I do such a good job. So Rich has already fallen asleep anyway, so it doesn't really matter. My phone continues to buzz, and it's all this stuff. It's been all consuming. It's been. I think I'm going to turn my phone off all day tomorrow just to get away from it. So there seemed to be something not jiving. There was something that didn't sound right, and I found out what it was. Both, of course, Joel knew it was being recorded, but so did Benjamin. It was planned to record it. So they've got a microphone in front of them. See, here's my microphone right here. They've got a microphone in front of them. And so you're going to be very careful how you phrase things and how you parse things and how you handle all this kind of stuff. That was purposeful. They knew that. And Tobias and Peter and the other guys, they just figured they're talking to Benjamin and concerned about his soul and concerned about where he's going. And so they're just pouring their hearts out, not knowing that the whole thing is being recorded. And that changes how you express yourself very clearly. So that was like, that's really interesting, how that all ended up turning out. So once the Zoom call comes out, and once Tobias has it, my recollection is he probably got it. Well, it was. I listened to it while driving out and back. When I was in Fort Worth, the FLF thing. It was that Sunday because I was preaching that Sunday at Jeff Neal's church out in Granbury, which had a wonderful time out there. Great church if you're in the area. Highly recommend it. And so I don't. No, that was okay. So that would have been before. Yeah, that was before the Frankfurt conference because I zoomed in to participate in that conference when I got back from that trip. So that was 3 or 4 days on the road back from Fort Worth. Is when the Frankfurt conference took place. And so, what was that? 10 days ago? Something like that? No, longer than that. Anyway, that was the time frame. Now, I've already gone for an hour and 23 minutes, and I can only imagine that just the blue laser-eyed guys are still listening. There are a couple other things that I do need to get to. I want to go through Peter's list, and that will help me remember all the other stuff. I recommend to anyone, and I think a web page should be put up someplace that has links to everything that has come out. So Joe Boot had Doug Wilson on the Ezra Institute podcast to talk about the Antioch Declaration. Yesterday, Iron Sharpens Iron had Joe Boot and others on that topic. Doug has done a bunch of things. The self-interview thing. And it's just amazing to watch the nasty, hate-filled responses from people who a year ago devoured everything that Doug did. And he even says in that one article that he did, that he's now recorded, it's on YouTube as well. He says, the interviewer, which is himself, asks him, how do you respond to the people who say you've changed so much? His response is, if you're on a boat pulling away from the dock, it looks like the dock is moving, but it's actually not. You're the one moving. And he's right. All you people who are going, we learned so much from you, and you taught me Reformed theology, but now you're just a boomer. We're not the ones that changed. You are. You have embraced a socio-political theory and cause. And you have socio-political. I'm trying to figure out what Siri is hearing on all this stuff. Because what's really freaky now is I have my hearing aids. So Siri, you're sitting here talking, and all of a sudden a disembodied voice starts talking to you. Oh, I see what it was. I said repeat. Okay, I get it. I understand. Anyway, you have laid this whole post-war consensus, crusades, masculinity stuff on top of the gospel. And we're just going, guys, it's not going to work. And so you're thinking, we've changed. We haven't. You're actually the ones who have changed. So before I go through the list, I'm going to keep this brief because, anyway, I was, again, on the road, and I will admit that there are times I look at my phone on the road. That's not a smart thing to do, okay? But there are times. And if you're sitting at a stoplight or something like that, you've got a couple seconds that you can glance at things. Though I am very careful not to ever be sitting there while everyone else is waiting behind me. It drives me nuts, so I don't ever do that. So I can do some quick glancing at a few things. And this watch of mine, it's not an Apple Watch, it's a Garmin watch. But it's very useful traveling because it'll give me enough of the message to at least give me an idea of what I'm looking at. Anyway, somewhere along the line, early after Eschatology Matters, and by the way, they got caught in the middle of this thing. I think they should just be left alone to do their own thing. I'm not angry with them. I guess there's been division amongst them because of all this, and I'm sorry about that. Early on, I'd say within the first week after Eschatology Matters pulled Tobias's webcast, A.D. Robles tweeted Scott Aniol. Now, I know Scott Aniol. Scott Aniol is a fellow professor at Grace Bible Theological Seminary. He's an incredibly godly man, a wonderful family. Just knows so much about the Psalms and worship and music and all that stuff. And a lot of Reformed guys don't like him because he's sort of, he's G3 and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, rolling my eyes. Anyway, he tweeted Scott Aniol and said that Scott Aniol had linked to Tobias's webcast. So anybody who linked to that evidently is responsible for everything Tobias said. And so he said to him, should delete the tweet and close your account, your Twitter account. Now, when I first saw that, And I can't, when you go back in Twitter, if you go back to something you saw a month ago in Twitter, first of all, good luck finding it. But everything that was around it as far as responses and stuff will be different now. That's one disadvantage. I mean, Twitter's one of the last bastions of free speech. I think we should support it while we can for lots of other reasons. But it's not ideal. Facebook's even worse, in my opinion. Not only because of the censorship, but it's not ideal. I was absolutely certain that I read A.D. Robles saying that Scott Aniol should leave the ministry. What probably happened is that was a response. Now, if you know how Twitter works, sometimes when I respond to someone, I will then respond to my response. If I respond to something and go real quick, I put it and I go, oh, I also want to say that. Then I'll respond to the response because it'll at least initially put it right below it. So I'm sitting here and I've, oh, okay. Yeah. Rich just said you've only got an hour. And now I just realized I'm looking at the on-air thing. And that's actually, it's an hour and 6 minutes. You're right. Thank you. We had started the feed early to make sure that it was a stable connection. So you're right. It's only an hour and 6 minutes so far. Okay. Anyways, I'm sitting here looking at this little screen in, between stoplights or at stoplights. And I think what I saw was a reply, because the replies, I think A.D. Robles was being a jerk, but he wasn't as much of a jerk as I thought he was being. The people who responded to it were being a jerk. And the one thing I've definitely learned is if you're on this side of stuff, you can say anything you want and nobody will call you down. Nobody will call you down. So I've been told, you need to apologize to A.D. Robles because he said to leave the ministry and he never said that. Okay. If he never said that, then I apologize for thinking that a response that somebody else wrote was his. And that's how it happened. Now, how many hours of video has A.D. Robles put out against me in the past month? Based on his own abject ignorance? Does anyone call for him to apologize to me? I can misread one tweet. You're a liar! And he can do hours of attacks on me, and everything's cool. That's where we are right now. So yes, if that wasn't him, if that was a response, I can't go back and find it. I don't know how anybody finds anything anymore on Twitter. But man, all you've got to do is read some of these response threads, and you'll want to give up on America. You'll want to give up on ever talking to anyone ever again. It's astonishing. And I never see anybody saying, oh man, come on. You can't say this type of stuff. And these people themselves don't seem to care that their stuff creates this. So I would invite anybody, go find the comment threads when A.D. Robles posts one of his many anti-James White videos over the past couple of weeks, and read the responses yourself and see if my misreading a response means that I'm disqualified, but everybody else is just fine for their behavior. That's where we are. So here is, and I'll be honest with you, that may, if it is up to me, that is the last time I will ever say that man's name. By the way, I've not listened. I listened to the first few minutes of one video early on. It started off as something about the World Series. I've mentioned this. That's it. I've not listened to anything else, and I won't. And I have no interest in so doing. And I hope I never have to ever mention that name ever again. So, Peter. Oh man, I should have been wearing it. It's because it's sort of ironic now. Back in when Peter and Tobias visited Apologia and Tobias preached, Peter gave me a Crusader ring. And that would make all these Crusader guys really jealous. But it's actually about 900 years old. from the Crusades made in Bethlehem, and I have it in the truck. And I just should have put it on. Just simply go, hey, got it right there. I frequently put it on when I'm going in someplace when I'm in the truck. Anyway, love Peter, and tremendous brother, and very quiet, but scary quiet. Deep quiet. You're wondering what they're thinking. He's been watching all this stuff, and he put together a list, and it was a good list. And it will help me to cover a lot of the stuff that I've been thinking about while driving that I knew I wouldn't get around to. And I'm sure I've forgotten stuff already in what I've said so far. Here's his list. The use of the strongest slander, mockery, and ridicule of anyone who holds a different opinion. Yeah, that is this. The receipts are everywhere. My screenshot folder is filled with astonishing statements from people. And again, most of them are anons. Not all, but most of them are anons. And the slander, mockery, ridicule, boy, for that side, that's their bread and butter. That's what they do. And look, people say, oh, it goes on both sides. 95% of it's on one side. 95% of it's on one side. If you've got a red avatar with blue eyes, there's no restraint. There's no restraint. Its nastiness is us. Mockery of physical appearance. Yeah. In fact, I need to get this. Let me see here. Yeah, there it is. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, I guess that's the best I'm going to be able to do. Let me see if this... I'm not sure if this is going to come up. Let me try. Oh, it will. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, okay. Here is a meme that I saw for the first time this morning. And here's the guy I said I won't talk about anymore. Eric Kahn, Joel Webbin, and Stephen Wolf. And they're all cool in their, well, three of them in suits. And they're really cool sunglasses. And so here's Tobias. And here's Joel. And here's me. Now, one thing I will point out. Evidently, people don't understand what a Kuji is. And they just can't get them right, no matter how hard they try. But there you go. And notice, sacralism. Sacralism. This is obviously infantile. It's childish. It's how do you even respond to this kind of stuff? But these are, whoever put this together probably has never read an early church father, probably has never read a book on church history at all, has no idea what sacralism is, but knows how to mock it, and believes the people who've taught him to mock it. I can guarantee you this person has no idea who Leonard Verdine was, has never read any of his stuff, and could never have argued with him if he had tried. This movement lives off of abject ignorance, and succeeds on the basis of abject ignorance. This is the kind of say they made they made. I don't want that to be full screen. Doug look like he's 10,000 pounds, and this kind of stuff. And I saw a tweet from a pastor doing a fat joke, talking about fat jokes. and included Tobias in it. And a number of people have attacked Tobias for his weight. Well, actually, he's lost a lot of weight. They don't care about that. But Tobias has said that he would say he's been heavier in the past. I'm controlling myself right now. If you're a pastor, if you claim to shepherd the flock of Christ, and you engage in this kind of fat jokes that are going around right now, I doubt you're going to remain a pastor very long. Because I don't understand how you can do it. Let me point out. I'm listening to the wind really blowing. It's going to be really cold tonight. I remember a number of years ago when I was in my weightlifting period, we had what we called the dog-haired gym in the back of my backyard. I had some good stuff. I had a vertical leg press. I had an incline bench. I had a flat bench. I had lat pull downs. I had good equipment in the backyard. We call it a dog-haired gym because we had a dog named Lexi, and so there was dog hair everywhere. Anyway, on Monday nights we'd get together and we'd get all buff and we had a lot of fun and help each other push toward PRs. Look, I understand the enjoyability of the exercise, the working out, the pushing of weights around. I'd get up at 2:00 in the morning and slam a protein shake just to stay anabolic, whole 9 yards. So I get it. We had a gym nearby that had some other stuff that I didn't have at home. And I remember going to that gym one day, and at the time, I had a PT Cruiser, and it was a manual transmission. And I did a massive calf workout because I was a cyclist before I became a lifter. And so, man, my legs, I was always my best stuff was calf raises and leg pressing and stuff like that. Very, very strong. Anyway, I could barely walk out of the place after just shredding my calves. And I couldn't get the clutch in because it starts shaking. I barely got home. And I thought to myself about this situation. I thought, let's say I was driving home and I go through an intersection and I get T-boned by someone who's high on meth and I become a paraplegic. I will never feel those muscles again. I will never move those muscles again. Am I less of a man? When you're making these fat jokes, have you ever been to a hospital to visit people that have various medical conditions that, for example, they might have to take certain steroidals because of arthritis issues and things like that cause them to balloon up? Do you have no one that might have that problem? Do you not realize you're going to age? Have you not seen these basketball players, these incredibly arrogant basketball players? And they're both going up for a rebound. They come down and one basketball player lands on another basketball player's leg inappropriately, and they're out for the season or maybe done. Permanent damage done. Are they less of a person because they can no longer do what they once did? You're going to age. And I look at pictures of myself. I could show you a picture if you wanted to from the top of Mount Evans in 2016. I just completed the Mount Evans hill climb, which most of you could never do, by the way. Even you big buff guys. I think back on that summer. 2 weeks earlier, I had done the double triple bypass in 2 days, 240 miles, 21,000 feet of climbing, and you're at altitudes between 7,500 and 12,000 feet above sea level. 2 weeks later, I do the Mount Evans hill climb. The finish line's at 14,130 feet above sea level. And I did it fast. I was so strong. I could run. I could row. Just so strong. That was my best year. And I was 54 years old. 54 years old. Shredded. 9% body fat. Then my heart condition became random. I had my worst heart rhythm experience 2 days ago. Doing great right now. But randomly, out of nowhere. You know what it's like to try to train to do something big when you don't know what your heart's going to allow you to do and when? Blew a hernia in 2020. I'd already had doubles repaired before that. It's genetic. My dad had them too. Now I have arthritis. You know, my shoulder right now is absolutely killing me because I'm driving so much. Arthritis, especially my right hip, really impacts what you can do, how long you can do it, my grip strength, things like that. Kidney stones. Hey, 3 operations in 1 year so far for kidney stones. I'm still riding. I'm going to try to do a long ride tomorrow. My bike's right there. That's one of the reasons we do the RVing. It's right there on a trainer. I'm going to try to. I'm trying to push on. I'm trying to continue to get to goals, but it's so hard. It's getting so much harder, and I'm just watching the numbers. That's called age. And if you're young, like I was, and fit, can get down to 9% body fat like I did. Look at some of my old dividing lines. Look at dividing lines between 2013 and 2018. I'm in great shape. I can't be in great shape anymore. I've gained a lot of weight. I can't run anymore. I got the hernia fixed. I wasn't going to do that, but got the hernia fixed. But my knees couldn't handle my running right now. My metabolism has changed. Everything. You're going to age. You may get an injury. You know, my right elbow's torn up. I was doing standing curls. I remember the day. I can Olympic bar, 245s, doing standing curls. Tore this elbow up. That was the beginning of the end of my weightlifting career right there. I could still do the leg stuff, but couldn't do much anything else. You're going to age. You're going to be injured. Are you going to be less of a servant of Christ? Let me tell you something. If you're running around telling a bunch of young guys who are working out the gym, hey, kings, and you don't realize, look, if you've got that health, then every time you lift that bar, you should be thanking God that you have that health, knowing you will not always have it. And to make that the standard, let me tell you something. The standard must be and always will be servant, not king. Thankful for whatever I have. I know that when I was big and buff, that was an opportunity for the sin of pride. Looking down on other people. I don't hear much warning about that. And every one of you that has mocked Pastor Riemenschneider in your ignorance based upon looks, that means it's sin and you need to repent of it. And you know it. Every one of you knows it. If you're a pastor, my goodness, you need to repent to your fellow elders. Every one of you. The extreme boasting of masculinity while everyone else is a wimp. Yeah. That is a part of this movement. No question about it. Pushing, advocating for, or relativizing Mahler and the Stone Choir, or at the very least, coexisting with them peacefully without any inclination to challenge them, as harsh criticism of them is deemed excessive. Yeah, I've had a conversation with somebody about that, and you know it. And it's right. It's right. Stone choir is a cancer. And if you won't warn the church, you're helping people to develop this cancer. It's true. To see our main problem in this world in the post-war consensus, especially in the Jews, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And all these guys, I had some guy saying, I'm sola post-war consensus. Look, most of these guys picked up the term post-war consensus from Reno's book. But if you read his discussion of the post-war consensus, for him, the post-war consensus is globalism and open societies. It's the United Nations and the European Union. They look at what happened in Germany and they see too much emphasis on family and religion and country and nationalism. And so, yeah, we need to get rid of all that so this doesn't happen again. Okay, that's one use of the phrase post-war consensus. And anybody who thinks I am an open society globalist, are you functioning in any way? I don't even know how to respond to something like that. I'm not a globalist. I'm not an open societies guy. It's painfully obvious to me that the vast majority of people using this phraseology don't have a clue what it means. Don't have a clue what it means. It's just become the buzzword. You just picked it up, you read Reno, or you heard somebody else who read Reno, and so you're just running with it. It's sad, but it's the case. Claiming that we, those of us who aren't joining your cabal, your mob, that we have made the post-war consensus the touchstone of Orthodox belief. You've got to believe the PWC, or we're going to excommunicate you. It has nothing to do with anything. You want to get excommunicated? Easy. Deny that the body of Christ is made up of men and women from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. Hold on to your animus. Be one of the people who would have responded to Paul in Colossians 3 when he said there is no Scythian. You would have said, I ain't having the Lord's Supper with those Scythians. They are warlike people. They murdered my grandparents. If you're a Scythian, I'm not sitting at the table with you. There's the issue. There's the issue. You have to understand that the gospel changes all of it. And if you have animus towards blacks, all this stuff where these people have gone after Kofi and Samuel Say and K-Dub, sin. It's simple sin. Your heart's not right. The Spirit of God's not in you doing that. If you're really a Christian, man, what are you doing to suppress the conviction of the Spirit for what you're doing? That's what I want to know. I mean, my goodness. Okay. Playing with clear Nazi ideology, footage, terminology, or even blatantly embracing these things is laudable. Well, yeah, we certainly see the Stone Choir people. But more and more people are going, well, we're just questioning the post-war consensus. No, you're not. And by the way, listening to the Zoom call, listening to Benjamin parsing, I wasn't mocking Jews who died. I was mocking a narrative. I don't buy it. Sorry. There was no consistency. If you listen carefully, follow along, there was no consistency. He was trying because he knew it was being recorded. He was trying, but there was no consistency. Don't buy it. I don't buy it. Deliberately attacking opponents together as a mob to silence them. Canceling of anyone who contradicts their consensus. threatening to destroy the relevance of the person and the ministry. Wow. I'm now irrelevant. Doug Wilson's irrelevant. Joe Boot's irrelevant. Andrew Sandlin's irrelevant. All these people, all of us who gave to so many of these men foundational understandings, we're now irrelevant. Because we've changed? No, because they've changed. Yeah, you're not keeping up with us. We're going to take we're taking the keys from Grandpa. Let me tell you something. The red avatar, blue laser-eyed guys, if they get the keys to the car, are going to wrap that car around a tree so fast it's going to make their head spin. And everybody else's too. I see no maturity here. You need maturity to build stable institutions. And right now, maturity is being mocked. We don't need no maturity. Yeah, okay. The manifest fun and enjoyment of attacking people online and showing no mercy to opponents, but even praying that God may curse and destroy them. This goes hand in hand with a proud satisfaction when their strategy appears to succeed. Now, it's only appearing to succeed within their little world. Thankfully, the vast majority of Christians are busy being Christians in their own lives and have no idea what any of this stuff is. Until it starts sneaking in the back door of the church, which it is doing. And that's the problem. That's why we will continue to warn pastors. This stuff comes through here. It comes through social media. It comes through webcasts. And that's how. It's not coming from your pulpit. You're not preaching it there. It comes in secretly. And so people are like, hey, have you heard about this? Have you heard about this webcast? It's really interesting. You're talking about this. You know, they're talking about the Nephilim. Well, that was just stupid stuff. But then once you've got them interested in something weird like that, and then have you heard about what really happened, you know, when the Jews did this or the Jews did that? And have you ever really thought about, you know, why you were taught that, you know, Hitler was, you know, that's how it gets in. Be very, very, when you hear people talking about this stuff, be very, very aware. Not shying away from the use of the most evil means and tactics such as memes, where pictures of people, including ministers, are used shamefully, composing mocking songs or spamming pages, such as signing the Declaration with false, often Nazi mocking names, mostly done anonymously. Yep. It's all over the place. And when you like that stuff, you share that stuff, you do realize that Jesus said you will answer for every word spoken. And that includes what you type. It includes what you have an AI bot generate for you. It's all going to be judged. And the motivations behind it. You need to realize that. Maybe you're not being told that, but that's what's going to happen. Constant reference to, it's astonishing to me how many times I've seen on the Jews and their lies, Martin Luther. That's the later Martin Luther. That's the post-1525 Martin Luther. Not Jesus was a Jew pre-1525. But yes, I've seen the cover just simply posted as refutation over and over again on the Jews and their lies. Return of the Strong Gods, Reno. Though I think he would just scratch his head at what a lot of people are trying to use the book for. And, of course, Stephen Wolf's book, The Case for Christian Nationalism, as their foundational works. Yes, exactly. Most definitely. And since Wolf's Christian nationalism, which is sacralism, you can mock that all you want. It still remains a fact. Since his position is a natural law position that does not require the Puritan hope, that is the work of the Spirit of God in converting the nations, they have no way of fighting this stuff. They can talk about, well, we don't want to go there, or we don't want to, that's useful, but they don't really have a Christian nationalism. If you don't have regeneration, you don't have Christian nationalism. So you're stuck with this stuff. You're stuck with this stuff. And yeah, it's a real problem. And I think it's going to be pretty fascinating to see what comes out of this April conference with Joel and the Ogden guys and Stephen Wolfe and Andrew Isker and whoever else they're dragging up there, over there, I guess. I think we're going to see the next level because they have to. You see, you have to keep coming up with new stuff, and going back to old stuff ain't going to work. Not with the people you're trying to keep excited about you. You know, remember the meme I put up there? If you want your followers putting you in those fancy suits with the cool glasses and mocking me and Doug and Tobias, if that's what you want, if you think that's cool, if you get a little buzz out of that, you've got to keep going farther and farther and farther and farther and farther to keep them happy, or they will turn on you. They will turn on you. Just be prepared. The constant references to non-biblical worldly thinkers and role models. That's what I'm talking about, putting a political theory on top of the gospel. The use of boomer as a derisive name for their opponents who need to be redeemed from their false ideology and are poor pastors and fathers to the new generation. Wow, is that all over the place. I think Doug's already addressed a lot of this stuff. And he's pointed out that generational divisions are foolish and irrelevant. You had good boomers and bad boomers. You've got good Gen Xers and bad Gen Xers, good millennials, bad millennials. The whole attempt to pretend like there's a boomer brain is childish rubbish. It's absolutely destructive of your, not only your argument, but your credibility as well. Well, you all gave us this mess. You know, if you want to use Reno's definition of post-war consensus, there have been a lot of us have been fighting that secularization our entire lives before you were born. So don't give me that. It's a lie. You may feel good. That may make you feel good, but it's a lie. The proud self-conception of being a new generation, finally brave and strong enough to see through the lies and fight evil in a meaningful way that truly will change something. Peter is exactly right. But what are you changing? What are you building? All you're doing is tearing down. You're not building anything. I'm sorry, memes online will not change this society. You can communicate truth that way, or you can communicate lies. But just simply having memes online changes nothing. It changes nothing. Yeah, the melodramatic wallowing in self-pity that they have been treated so badly by the world, especially by the boomers, and that all they really want are kind, understanding fathers in the faith. There's a tremendous amount of rebellion being expressed. When you rebel against what Scripture says about loving neighbor as self, and who's your neighbor? Wow. How's that being answered today in this movement? Who's your neighbor? When you're saying your neighbor shouldn't be your neighbor. Your neighbor doesn't look the way you want them to look. If this nation's ever going to be great again, then I need to get rid of my Hindu neighbor or my Mexican neighbor or my black neighbor or my Jewish neighbor or whatever else. Wow. That's just rebellion. Absolute rebellion. This goes hand in hand with a distrust of normal pastors and churches who are generally suspected of wanting to impose church discipline for made-up sins. Finally, Breaking with Moscow, Apologia, and White. Ezra, G3, etc. By the way, I'm part of Apologia. We could have just put Alpha and Omega there. And I'm part of Ezra, and I speak at G3. By claiming that they are not reformed enough, woke, and out of date. They were good enough for fighting back then, but for fighting today, they are too feminized and need to disappear into irrelevance. Well, there are a bunch of folks that do think that. Okay? Then you better get to work. Because those of us who have spent 30, 40 years of work to build ministries, to address real issues, you better get to work. I'm sorry. Webcasts where you're sitting on your couch with a phone on your belly or just making jokes and doing memes and stuff like that, I ain't going to cut it. That ain't going to cut it. That's not going to build anything. That's going to last. It'll fall down before you know it. You're not building anything. You're just tearing stuff down. And I just wonder if you have the maturity to even know how to. Since you're being rebellious. Yeah. So I appreciate that list from Peter because I think that's an excellent summary of what is found there. In the record that has taken place. So here's what I would say to everybody. And I'm sorry to do this on Thanksgiving Eve, but we've been delayed in being able to respond appropriately. I don't want to be having to be thinking about this stuff over the next couple of days. I'm going to get to be teaching on the atonement and being with brothers and sisters, and that's what I want. And so got to get this done and get it out there. There's plenty of information now. Listen and watch Tobias's response because he's including, the clips from the Zoom call and from Joel Webbin's webcast and from his webcast and saying, okay, here's what's going on here, here's what's going on there, that kind of stuff. Listen to that. Listen to the Ezra Institute podcast with Joe Boot and Doug Wilson. The Iron Sharpens Iron program from yesterday. Doug's interview thing on Blog and Mablog that I thought was really, really useful. Cross Politic did it. Chocolate Knox isn't involved in any of this stuff, and he kept reminding us of that. But listen to the Cross Politic thing. Now you've got this. And I really think if you then compare what's on the other side, and especially what's been being cranked out, hours and hours of stuff over the past 3 weeks that was being cranked out without the other side providing the rest of the information. That's embarrassing. I wouldn't be surprised to see a number of those things just disappear because it's embarrassing. It really is. Now, again, this isn't going to convince the blue laser-eyed people. They're not listening. If I mentioned before, I've talked with people who said, I'm not going to listen to what Tobias says. I've made up my mind. Okay, there's nothing I can do for folks like that. So it's not going to just fade away tomorrow. It's gonna go on, but there's no reason to keep investing huge amounts of time in going back over everything. That's why I say there needs to be an archive page. Here's the stuff. If you want to know, here, go listen. If you want to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours, well, more than that. I mean, my goodness, if you just listen to everything I just listed, that would be, 6-7 hours. Most people don't have any interest in that.